How can you break through that plateau? How can you break through to get to another level of maybe fulfillment or success and actually step up your game? There are several types of breakthroughs and there's several types of plateaus we can go through. But the one I want to discuss today is our identity plateau. Most of the time, we plateau at a level because we don't actually see ourselves as capable of getting to the next step. This is what I call the identity plateau. There's a hard ceiling around what we can achieve, and this is based on how we see ourselves. What you'll notice is the second you start to visualize yourself taking more actions, being that sort of person, suddenly you can achieve it. It all happens in our minds, and that's always the case. So let's look a bit at how this plateau gets in the way. Why is it that the way we see ourselves is such a blockage or plateau? And what can we do to break through it? The reason it blocks us is because we construct throughout life, through conditioning, through experiences, through what we go through, this image of who we are. We become maybe someone who's good at this and this skill and bad at that skill because we've experienced these other skills, because we've built up on them, because we believe in these skills. Maybe we enjoy them. We become someone who's more sociable or less sociable, or who's good at speaking or good at writing. And this is because we create these ideas and these stories simply by putting loads of facts together and putting them together in a story or several stories. And I know this can be hard to hear because they can feel like real facts. It can really feel like you're not someone who's good at public speaking, or you're someone who's very good at writing. But the truth is, these things can all change. And it's more that, yes, experiences have accumulated and have made you better in certain skills for sure. But that doesn't mean it's written in stone. And that doesn't mean it's not something you can shift or change. Likewise, there's certain skills you might stop practicing and not be as good at, like languages. And there's certain skills you might suddenly take interest in and build upon, and you'll become good at it. So our identity can really be molded. It's not this fixed, carved box in which you need to stay your whole life. And this is great news, because it means that if there's an aspect or several aspects of your identity that you don't like anymore, and you don't want to be like that anymore, you can change it. And this can be whether it's character driven, like if you're someone who's very impatient, or someone who's intolerant, or a bit harsh. All of this you can shift. It's not, this is who I am. No, you can change that. And this is also valid for most skills. Pretty much any skill you can go from totally non-existent to at least quite good. World-class level might not be in each skill, but it's definitely possible to go from 0 skills to pretty good just through practice. So why is it that we stop ourselves? Because, as Tony Robbins mentions several times, the greatest force in the universe is the need to be consistent with our identity. Our identity makes us feel safe. And therefore, if we're consistent with it, it makes us feel like this is who I am. So we like to repeat these patterns. We like to continue doing what we're good at, not trying what we're not good at. And this is who we are character-wise. But we can change that. It's uncomfortable. For instance, if you feel, let's say, as I said earlier, in your character, that you don't like the fact you're too impatient, or maybe you're a bit harsh with people sometimes, you can shift that. It's not blocked. It's not written in stone. It's not something you can't change. There's several steps you go through to shift anything in your identity. First of all, awareness. First of all, become aware. What is it that you want to change? And when are you doing it? So this means every time you're getting snappy or impatient, or, moving around impatiently, hoping something will happen, notice. Then start to create an alternative behavior. So start to think, okay, every time I get impatient, what I'll do is take 5 deep breaths. Every time I'm waiting in a queue, every time I'm getting impatient about my projects, every time I feel something isn't going fast enough, etc., etc. You get the idea. So first awareness, then shift of behavior. Now you might be wondering, what about skills? Okay, this is character driven, become aware, change how you act in situations. Okay, but what about a skill, something you're really not good at? Let's say you've never danced. Well, how do you become good at dancing? you start. So most of us don't take action with something that's not aligned with our identity because we're afraid. We're afraid we'll fail. We're afraid we'll get rejected. We're afraid that it's not consistent with our identity. Let's say you're someone who's really into boxing and you think that's cool. You think, well, if I take up dancing, maybe it's too feminine and it doesn't suit who I am as a person. And so we create all these stories and all these fabrications. If you want to start dancing, dance. And this is what I did. I mean, several years ago, I actually began ballet dancing, classical dancing in my 30s. I didn't do it as a child, unlike what people expect. And I was just curious. Generally, these shifts come from curiosity. And I started, and of course, I was hopeless at it. And it was definitely not in my identity. But that's how we start any skill. When we begin, we're always not good at something. And that's something we're perfectly okay with as children, but as adults, we become paralyzed. And even in my case, there were many times I fancied quitting because I felt I wasn't good. So what was the point? And this is something very common with high achievers. If I can't be brilliant, why am I doing it? Maybe you want that skill. Maybe you want to learn. Maybe you're having fun. Maybe you're learning and exploring through having this ability. And then a couple of years later, I became better. So no, I'm not performing at the ballet or the opera, but I enjoy it. And I've gotten to a level where I get to enjoy this activity or hobby more, and I get a lot out of it. So the bottom line is, even if it's something that's not in your identity yet, and this can be anything from a skill as a hobby or a professional skill, it can be in any field, this is something you can shift. This is something you can change. And for that, awareness and then taking action. Start to take action to build that identity. And this, from the action, you build the belief that you actually can do it, which builds up your self-confidence. And from that confidence, it builds and recreates this identity through the stories you're telling yourself. And this can help if you use visualization. If you start to see yourself as a dancer or a public speaker or a patient person, if you start to ask yourself, what would I be like if I was kinder? What would I be like if I was more tolerant? Would I say this in this comment? Would I act that way? And this is how you can really dismantle your whole identity and build it from scratch in lots of different areas. And this is when people then meet you a year from now, 2 years from now, and say, wow, you've changed. And that's because you've stopped living on autopilot. You've stopped just taking the identity that was built from all your conditioned past and experience, and you've started to recreate it from scratch and rebuild it from the ground up and work on the skills and aspects of your character that you want to have in your life. So that's the good news. You can break through that plateau. Visualization, awareness, taking consistent action, and start building those proofs, because sometimes we do have an identity. A client of mine said she still couldn't see herself as a business owner, yet she is a business owner. So what's that about? Well, sometimes we don't have that identity because we still don't really believe we're that person. Then you need to gather some proofs. Maybe start doing a vision board, visualization, start taking different photos or printouts of different moments in your business to really prove to your mind, oh yes, I am this person now. So this can help if it's an identity you've really shifted, and this can help you to see it in a different perspective. And sometimes this takes time and sometimes it's fast, it depends. And so if you want to break through this plateau, if you want to break through something that's holding you back, whether it's in terms of skills or character, and you feel you no longer want to be that way, good news is you can change it. The bad news is it takes effort. And so for that, become aware. What is it that you want to change? When are you doing it? Start to take action in those moments. Be clear about who you'd like to be and build up this new sense of identity. Gather proof as you go along and visualize yourself as being that person. Because the truth is, you can pretty much become anyone that you really want to be. So it's just a matter of being clear. Who do you want to be? And start creating those actions, start taking those actions to become that person. Because to change, we need to build a new sense of identity through taking those actions. Hope this makes sense for you. This is such an important topic. So much of what we do comes from this impression, illusion of who we are. It's even something James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. If you want to build these new habits, start seeing yourself as someone with these habits. And then this need for being consistent with our identity will help you thrive in so many different areas. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment or a review. Thank you.